Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you'll have a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast, episode number 1375, Coronation Review. So, welcome to Saturday. Welcome to a historic day. How many of you got up in the early hours? Some in the early hours of the morning. Like if you're with me, you're up around 1:30 a.m. I did actually go and have some sleep and got up. I had my alarm set for 1:45, and I actually woke up at 1:30 and I figured I'm up. And so I got up to watch the coronation. So how many of you got up to watch the coronation? No matter where in the world you were you able to get up and watch the coronation? And yes, I wore my tiara just for the occasion. So I figured I'd put it on here today for the review. So when I got up, now I have BritBox through Amazon Prime, and they said it was going to be broadcast live on BritBox. I could not find it anywhere. So unfortunately, I ended up with watching a live telecast via the US news service. I have to say, the coronation itself, the whole pomp and circumstance and the pageantry and the traditions was awesome. But I was not impressed with the American reporters trying to report on something that they clearly were not well versed in. They had channel I watched. They had an NFL player in London reporting, a former NFL player in London. Now he did a good job as far as he could do it, but there was a lot of little stuff that didn't need to be in there, or where they didn't quite get it 100% correct, and that kind of bugged me a little bit. And I was sitting there through Facebook Messenger chatting with a friend of mine who was in Toronto watching as well, and we were commenting, and she was watching it on a different channel, which sounded like it was giving better coverage than but they were all tuned into the same TV feed, which was interesting. There were times when the reporters were talking when they shouldn't have been, which really sort of like showed me, which kind of to me felt disrespectful, but that was my opinion. Others may have thoroughly enjoyed it. Overall, I enjoyed the whole ceremony and being able to watch a part of history that has not occurred in 70 years. And to be able to watch that was incredible. Despite the reporters, but throw that out the window. Because I now found the BritBox thing, and I have been sitting watching the recording, a replay of what BritBox televised, and I would tell you, night and day difference. There's a night and day difference between the commentary and everything else. It was just absolutely fascinating, and the whole pageantry about that. On BritBox, they had a 5-series TV show. Or documentary, and each series, and each episode was only 6 to 10 minutes in length. So it's a very quick thing that you could get through fairly quickly. But they looked at, what are some of the weird things you're going to see at the coronation? What is the king's crown worth? Who is expected to be invited? Who's getting invited, because they had to pare it down. They had, when Queen Elizabeth was coronated, they had like 8,000 people in Westminster Abbey, and they had built these stands for people to sit in just so they could get that number of people in the Abbey. And they said, well, that's not going to happen today. They had like somewhere around 2,000 to 2,200 people in the church, in the Abbey. There was things like, what are you expected to wear, and then what was the future of the how they see the future of the monarchy. And they had these 3 different. One was a royal historian, one was a royal correspondent, and one was I think she's the editor of the Majesty magazine, which follows the royals all around the world. And so they gave very different insights to things, and it was very interesting listening to them and learning about some of the stuff. And as Kathy and I were talking, she'd make some comment or something, oh yeah, and rattle off some piece of information that I'd learned from these shows that I'd watched before I went to bed last night to wake up for the coronation. Everything finished like around 6:30, I think it was. And I was going to take Zeffie for a walk at that point. And I was like, I can't even keep my eyes open. And so I went to bed I went to bed. I had my thing. The timer set for like about an hour and a half to 2 hour nap, 2 hours, and I got woken up with a little and I wake and I heard this little and I thought, what's that? And I reach over to pet Zeffy because she sleeps where the pillow is for another person on the bed, and it was empty. I'm like, where did that come from? And I sit up and look, and she's laying down beside me on the bed, and I'm like, you don't usually lay here. And she looks at me and goes, So I was like, up, showered, dressed, and off we went for our morning walk, and then came back, had breakfast, and then went and took another nap. I'm still tired, you can see by the suitcases under my eyes here. But overall, I really did enjoy the coronation. Sorry, totally forgot. We're just totally escaping. The coronation. It was a lot of traditions, pageantry. All the kings of England have been crowned in Westminster Abbey, which shows you just how old that building is because it goes back many, many, many years. King Charles was the 40th monarch to be coronated. Was the 40th monarch to be coronated in Westminster Abbey. One of the things I learned was that the St. Edward's crown, which is what he was actually crowned with when he was sitting in the coronation chair, holding on to the two scepter things, was that crown never, ever leaves Westminster Abbey. And I thought, isn't that interesting? But it dates back to the 11th century to Edward the Confessor, who the crown's named after. And there was at one point, and it's a sacred crown, it cannot leave Westminster Abbey. It weighs about 5 pounds. I wrote this down. Weighs about 5 pounds, is made of 22 karat gold, and has 440 stones. It is considered a holy crown, and it cannot leave Westminster Abbey. They must wear another crown, and if they, when they leave the Abbey, they have to wear another crown. And that's when they put the imperial state crown on them, so they can wear a crown outside the thing. That one only weighs 2.5 pounds. They one of the commentators. That cracked me up. One of the commentators turned around and said, "It's like wearing it was the professor of royal history. She said, putting that crown on your head is like walking with a 5-pound newborn baby on your head." And I just cracked up laughing because I thought, well, the crown won't wriggle. But yeah, there was a couple of times when it looked like it was being jammed on his head, and they were lining it up to make sure it was balanced there and it wouldn't move or fall off or anything else, because they don't really size these things, I guess. But many of the jewels on the crown date back to 1661. So that was kind of interesting. And the imperial state crown, I wrote down some of these. The front is a diamond that's called the Cullen. It's the Cullen 2 diamond. And now the Cullen diamond was discovered in 1905 and was presented to King who was in power then. It was presented to the king at the time in 1905 for his 65th birthday. I'm trying to remember who was the king. It might have been King Edward the 7th. Yeah, King Edward the 7th, I think it was. And it was this big day. And from that, they have created, and from that one diamond, they have nine diamonds from it. And they're all named Cullen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Cullen 1 is in the top of the scepter when he gets presented with the ordinary scepter. So at the top of the scepter is the Cullen 1 diamond, which was 530 carats. Yeah, 530 carats, and is worth $49 million. And I was just like, that's sparkly. That's all I could think of, that's sparkly. But in the imperial crown, they have the Cullen 2, which is 370 carats. And the different Cullens, are all different sizes. And three of the Cullen diamonds, 3, 4, and 5, were put into Queen Mary's. Camilla had them put into Queen Mary's crown, which is the crown that she wore, and was crowned with, and then wore from the Abbey. And that crown was created in 1910 for when Queen Mary was crowned next to her husband, who was King. Is that George V? George V. I think it was George V. Anyway, she was queen at the time, and she designed it. And so it's got this Art Deco design. Has 2,200 diamonds in it. I mean, just this history that they brought out on display. And they were talking about, like the jeweled sword he got handed and how thin it is, but it's very heavy, and it's got the thistle of Scotland, the rose of England, the shamrock of Ireland on it, but it's also very heavy. And when King George IV had it commissioned, it cost about £6,000, and in today's money that would be over 600,000. They said they switched it to dollars at that point. And the jeweled sword of offering, it's called the jeweled sword of offering. It symbolizes the warrior, that the king or queen is going to be the warrior on behalf of the country and the church, is what that does. Then they're presented with the orb and the scepter, and the orb is a hollow gold globe, and the cross above it represents Christ's dominion over the world. Has 300 is covered with emeralds, pearls, rubies, and diamonds, and it just has 365 diamonds alone on that thing. The cost of it when it was made was £1,150, and today that would be worth over $200,000. So it's just this history that was in there. And then, of course, the scepter is covered with jewels. It's got the Cullen 1, which is the 530 carat, worth over $49 million. It was given to King Edward VII for his 65th birthday. That's the one. King Edward VII in 1905. It was given to King Edward VII in 1905 for his 65th birthday. They also talked about the gold coach that you saw them leave Westminster Abbey in. And there was a film / documentary that came out. I can't remember when it came out, but basically this presenter was given exclusive access to the Queen, and they talked, and I think it was done for her 70th. It was meant to be done for her 70th Jubilee, and they talked about what her memories of her coronation 70 years ago, as they were leading up to her 70th Jubilee. And she was talking about how uncomfortable the gold coach was. And the gold state coach was built in 1762, and it has gold leaf all over it. It weighs about 4 tons. It's not very comfortable, and she said it made her feel quite nauseated. And when I was watching the King and Queen as they were leaving Westminster Abbey in this thing, and you could see it because it's got the big wheels on their frame, and then there's like these huge leather straps that go underneath the actual coach piece that they sit in, and up on top of these pieces on top of the wheels. And so the coach where they sit is actually riding on these leather straps, and it's going, and you can see it, and even though it was going walking pace, you could see it bouncing around quite a bit. So I hope that they were okay and didn't feel nauseated as well. But they would have had a bumpy ride in that one. But that was kind of interesting because it was built in 1762. And somewhere along the way, I thought I heard that it was had a price tag of like $49 billion or something like that. But I couldn't find it again. So, but yeah, the coronation chair that he sat in to be coronated in, that thing's over 700 years old, and it's only, and the king or queen only sits in it once in their reign, and that's when, and that they only sit in that chair to have the crown, to be as the coronation chair. So they sit in there to get the crown placed on their head and coronated with the crown. They only sit on it once. Below the chair is the stone of Scone from Scotland, and it was said that, and they put that under the chair at some point, and at some point it was said it was stolen. So one of the kings in the past returned it. It got returned to Scotland, and then for this coronation, it was actually brought down from Scotland to be placed under the chair for the king to sit on, as he was also becoming the King of Scotland as well. And it's got graffiti, and they're showing like close-ups of the chair, and there's like carved in graffiti of people's names all over it. And I thought maybe those are the kings and queens. I'm looking at going, yeah, no, that's not the kings and queens. And apparently during the 1800s, people were told to carve their names in it, and I'm sort of like, okay. You never know. Another thing that I found interesting too was because these series gave you a lot of history about pieces that were being used during the coronation ceremony, and the music, I have to say, some of it was okay, some of it I was just like, yeah. So I just used whenever they went to music, that was bathroom break and snack break and fill up the water bottle break. Just so that we could, just to keep replenished and stay awake and get up, move around, that sort of thing. Some of the music was really good. There was a piece in there that was composed by Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. They had live. They actually had a live orchestra playing, a scaled down orchestra playing in the abbey up near where the coronation chairs were. They had them set up there, and all the musicians were all standing except for the person on the cello. And then they had the choir there, and the conductor was very animated. So if you saw a conductor animated throughout the thing, this was that same conductor, and he was very animated and very entertaining to watch. So when they were playing, if it was something that he was conducting, I actually sat and would watch those pieces because he was very animated when they showed him. During the replay, and I'm still working my way through the replay, they haven't left Buckingham Palace yet, but on the replay, on the English coverage, on the British coverage, they showed the motorcade leaving Clarence House and heading to Buckingham Palace, where Prince Charles and Queen Camilla would have been dressed in the robes and dressed for the ceremony there, and then put into the Diamond Jubilee state coach, which is only 11 years old. So if you saw that, the Diamond Jubilee state coach, that is only 11 years old. It was built for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee and put into service 11 years ago. And so they left Clarence House, went over to Buckingham Palace, got changed into all of their regalia and everything else, and from there left. What was I going to do? Oh yeah, the anointing oil. Now I found this interesting. King Charles asked for because the anointing oil is the holy oil that they use, and so he asked specifically for the oil to be animal free and cruelty free, and the olive oil that they use for the base of the anointing oil actually came from olive groves in Jerusalem, where the king's grandmother, who is Alice, Princess Andrew of Greece and Princess of Battenberg, is buried. Now you're going, the king's grandmother, and you probably automatically think of the Queen Mother. No, this is Prince Philip's mother, who is buried in this particular olive grove in Jerusalem, where they got the olives from to create this holy oil. So I thought that was kind of thing. Then they had, and I couldn't catch the name of what they actually call it, but they had like this bird thing, which is actually an eagle, and the oil drips out of the spout of its beak onto the coronation spoon. And the history behind the coronation spoon is that it dates back to around the 13th century, and they say it is the only crown jewel in the entire crown jewel collection that dates back before 1660. Before the 1660s, and I thought that was rather interesting too. So there was a lot of stuff that was there, a lot of history that you see. There were pieces that we saw, like the eagle, the coronation spoon, the scepter, the orb, the St. Edward's crown, the state gold that only come out for a coronation. So some of that stuff has not been seen in 70 years, and it got to shine bright today and sparkle. And I tell you, the jewels were very definitely sparkling on the crowns and on the scepters and that sort of thing. But yeah, the whole thing. Now, I had read in advance the program as to what happens, and I said at one point, I said to Kathy, I said, they're running late. She goes, why is that? I said, they're supposed to be putting the crown on his head at like 12 o'clock, which is now. And it was actually, and they had a little clock going in the corner of the TV screen showing London time. And she's like, oh. And it was like 3 minutes later, they actually put the crown on his head. So and then from then on, they were running 3 minutes late for everything. So, but it had a lot of precision. There was a lot of pageantry and all of that. Seeing Prince George there, being one of the page boys for the king, was really cool. Seeing him all growing up. I mean, he's 10 years old now. And I was talking with a friend of mine who lives in London earlier today, and we were talking about that. And she says, well, and I said, well, if you think about it, King Charles at the age of 74, he'll be 75 in November, later this year, June, July. He'll be 75 soon. He is actually the oldest king in England to be coronated. He's also the longest running heir to the throne, because he had to wait 70 years to be able to sit it on the throne. So he's the longest running heir to the throne, and up until him, it was King William the was he King William the Fourth? I think he was like 64 or 65 when he was crowned. And so up until King Charles was crowned, it was actually King William, like the Fourth, I think it was age 64 when he was crowned. King Charles is 74, so yeah. And so, he's 74, 75, coming up 75. And so we're talking back and forth, going, well, how long do we think the king will live beyond this? How long will his kingship be? And, just speculating with things and all of that sort of stuff. And we started, well, 20 years, that would put him at 95, around 95 years. And I said, well, look how old his mother was when she passed, and how old his dad was when he passed, and how old his maternal grandmother was when she passed. I said, there's a bit of longevity in that family. And she said, like, yeah, there is. And so I said, okay, well, we'll give round numbers of 20 years. And so I said, well, do you realize that in 20 years, Prince William will be 60, George will be 30, and probably married with his own family, or starting his own family at that time. And it was just sort of like, oh my gosh. And then I stopped and thought about this, and I thought, I remember when Princess Anne got married in 1970, whatever it was. I watched her wedding. I then watched Prince Charles' wedding to Lady Diana in 1981. Then there was Prince Andrew to Sarah Ferguson a couple of years later, I think. I'm trying to remember this. Then there was Prince Edward to Sophie. And I thought, my gosh, I've watched all of the Queen's children get married. I've watched them all have families of their own. I've watched their children grow up and now married, and and some, with the exception of Prince Edward, Queen Anne's children are married with kids. I think there's a couple of divorces in there as well. Doesn't matter. Actually, no. Yeah, Queen Anne's children are married with children. King Charles' children are married with their own children. Let's see, Prince Andrew's girls are married with their own children. And Prince Edward's the only one that doesn't have, he's got children, but they're not married yet because of their ages. I think his oldest one's, I can't remember how old his kids are, but I know that they're probably still in their teens. So they'll be coming along and watching them. So we've watched, in my lifetime so far, I've watched each of the four Queen's children get married, have their own families, and now I'm watching the Queen's grandchildren married and with their own families. And I'm like, wow. And I may get to, we don't know how long we've got on Earth here, and in 20 years, I may get to see, in 20, roughly around 20 years, we just worked with round numbers. Prince William will be 60, Prince George will be 30, and probably married with his own kids. I'm just like thinking, like, through how many generations that is that I've watched all these years over my lifetime. And I'm so like, that's pretty incredible. So, but yes, I did enjoy all the ceremony that was taking place. And they would, and one of the pre-things they were talking about having the transparent screen to be able to see the anointing, but they came out with the screen sided. Now, when the Queen was done, it was a canopy that was brought out with drapes around it. And so you didn't get to see any of it. This one, they just had 3 sides around it, but you couldn't see over the top of it anyway because of the camera angles. And he was anointed under there, and it was dribbled onto the coronation spoon that was then put onto the face. Whoever dips their finger in it and does like a cross on King Charles, and it was a symbolism of his commitment to the church and to God to fulfill his role. And then let's see, then they had the procession out into the gold coach. Watching that go down the street was pretty cool. And there were times that they did like a full down the mall view, and it's sort of like you can see this little bit of a gold thing in the middle there just bobbing away, and all these people marching in coordinated, just marching with military precision next to them. You could see the white glove hands coming up and alternating sides and things like that. It was actually pretty spectacular. And then in the Diamond Jubilee state coach was Prince William and his family in there. And I have to say, Prince Louis, he did really, really good. I love watching anything where Prince Louis is because he's always up to something, making faces. But he actually sat there pretty well today. At one point, he was removed into the care of the nanny, but he was brought back out for the procession out of Westminster Abbey. And then little Princess Charlotte, oh, she looked adorable. She just seems to have this, I don't know. She definitely has some traits in there that I have seen in Princess Anne, I've seen in the Queen, I've seen in her mother. And she sort of has this combination of both. And while at the same time she can look mischievous and have fun, she also knows when she needs to be very serious as well. And I have seen times in different things when you see the royal family out and about where she has leaned over to Prince George and reminded him to do something, or quietly told him not to do something. But she just looked absolutely adorable. And I love Catherine, Prince of Wales, her non-tiara headpiece, because there was no tiaras worn in the church, in the abbey at the service. There was that was one of the things that was not banned, but just advised not to wear. And so I thought, well, that's going to be interesting with the royals coming in. And so she had this beautiful headdress. I don't know what it was made of, but it was and I thought, well, that's as non-tiara wearing as you can get with whatever it is it's made of. But it looked fantastic. And Princess Charlotte had a smaller version of that, which I thought was rather cool, that, matched her mum in some areas. But overall, the whole ceremony was really cool to sit and watch. Loved every minute of it. And I'm actually enjoying rewatching the whole day on the British version of it and how they did it and how they reported it. And there is such a night and day difference between American reporters reporting a British tradition and British reporters reporting a British tradition, very much. The fly pass wasn't as big as they wanted it to be because of the low cloud cover. And the day, it did rain on the day, but it also rained on the day of Queen Elizabeth's coronation as well. So that was pretty cool to watch all of that, and to see them come out on the balcony and see the fly past. And it was just Chinook helicopters and the Red Arrows. The Red Arrows there was meant to be like the Chinook helicopters, and then there was meant to be a contingent of about 40 or 50 other aircraft from different air forces throughout the Commonwealth were supposed to be participating. And then the Red Arrows were going to come at the back to release the red, white, and blue smoke at the back. And so it was just the Chinooks and the Red Arrows. But I got to see the Red Arrows, which was pretty cool. The rest of it, I was sort of like, it is what it is. But it would still look pretty good. And the Royal Salute in the back garden, that really impressed me, because there's a guy right up the front, and there were like 47,000 military members there from all around the Commonwealth. So not only the British military, but all the other militaries from around the Commonwealth, which I think is like 15 countries or something like that. So about 47,000 military troops that they had there in the back gardens of Buckingham Palace, doing the Royal Salute, all in formation, doing the Royal Salute. And at one point, this guy is, they had to do the salute first. So one guy was screaming out the instructions of what they had to do, and the right people were snapping to salutes at the right time. Like, how the heck are they hearing this? Because it didn't look like there was any microphones nearby, except for what was on the television or whatnot. And then this guy, I don't know what his. I know that he had sergeant stripes on, but he also had a crown insignia over top of it, which to me would have said that he was like a warrant officer, thinking back to my military days. But he was the one that gave the command to remove the headdress, prepare to remove headdress. So you see all of the guys that were in the bearskin hats with their hands snap up to getting the chin strap. And there was remove headdress, and all that you can see. And they did this aerial shot, and you can see everybody all pulling their headdress off and putting it to the right side. And then they had to do the cheers with raising their headdress. And this guy led all of that. And I'm like, the guys in the back are hearing this. There's 47,000 military guys there. I thought somebody's got to be giving a signal, but there was like no delay. You could see them all going up and down at the exact same time. So they must have had some way of broadcasting that sound back to those in the back, because that was pretty impressive. But I'm always impressed with military and their precision. And I mean, even the horses looked amazing. I love watching the horses. Even the horses played their roles beautifully as well. So it was overall very impressed. And, that was just a piece of history from today. A piece of history. And who knows when we'll see the next coronation. Will I see another coronation? I have no idea. I don't know what my time schedule is here on Earth. I just know that right now I'm not done with what it is I'm supposed to be here for. So I could live to be 70. I could live to be 90. I may see another coronation. I may not. There are people who are older than me who may never see another coronation. This is the only coronation they've seen. My mother saw, she remembers the Queen's coronation. So I'm going to actually sit with her and record what she remembers about that time, along with the death of King George VI, who was Queen Elizabeth II's father. So get her thoughts on that, get her memories on that, get her memories on when Queen Elizabeth was crowned. And then I don't know if they stayed up, because for them it was going to be starting the broadcast is going to be starting like around 9:30 p.m. New Zealand time for them. So I don't know if they stayed up to watch that or not. But they may watch reruns of it. They may just watch whatever comes on the news, the headlines and that sort of thing. But to get her thoughts about it now, 70 years later, what's it like watching the king being coronated? And I do know that the Queen's coronation service was 5 hours. This one was pared down to 2. And one thing that the American reporters the British, okay, so here's the night and day difference. British reporters were all about the traditions, the pageantry, how things have been modernized. So there's a lot of tradition, but there's also a lot of modern elements that have been brought into this thing. The American reporters were all about diversity. I lost count of the number of times they talked about diversity. It was like a point that they were stuck on. And there was one point there just after the king had been coronated where they had some religious leaders from different religions come up and offer their blessings to the king. And the reporters talked over that entire portion of the coronation, was while these religious leaders were blessing the king in their own religion, the reporters were talking over that and going to, let's go to something. Now, how are you feeling about this today? And everybody was like, and whenever they said, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? And I'm like, please have some respect for what's going on. So yeah, there was little things that would niggle me like that. But overall, very impressed with the pageantry, with the traditions. Love the modern twists that they put into things. Not the modern twists, how they modernized it a little bit, They brought some modern elements into it. Yes, there was a lot of diversity there. In the Queen's Day, when you look at photographs from the Queen's coronation and stuff, and you see what happened today, you can see where there's a lot of big differences. For one, there was not 8,000 people in Westminster Abbey. There was only just over 2,000, because they took down the stands that had been built for the coronation for Queen Elizabeth II, because those were just too dangerous. But King Charles was there at his mother's coronation, and there's a photograph of him, and the Queen Mother is sitting here. Prince Charles at the time, was standing on the railing looking really bored, and then Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, was sitting next to the Queen Mum, and Prince Charles was between them. It was a great picture from back then. But anyway, that's it. I'm out of here. Overall, really happy that I got up to watch the coronation as it happened, and now I'm going to enjoy watching the recording of it from a completely different perspective. So looking forward to that. Anyway, I've got a puppy who's just come over to say, it's time, Mama, we got to go walk. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Please let us know in the comments below what your thoughts were of the coronation. Did you get up? Did you watch it? What were your thoughts? What did you like, not like about it? Just let us know that in the comments. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konara.